Hey warriors, the most honest thing a believer never says out loud is this: there were seasons I believed in God with everything I had and still felt completely, utterly, devastatingly alone. Seasons where I prayed every single day and the silence on the other side was so thick it had a weight to it. Seasons where I watched people around me receive the very things I had been asking the Creator for, and I smiled at them from the outside while something inside me was quietly breaking. Seasons where I went through every ritual, every prayer, every act of devotion that my faith required and felt nothing at the end of it. Just hollow. Just the sound of a faith that had stopped reaching the place where faith is supposed to live. I never said this out loud, because you are not supposed to. Every religion has its version of the face you are expected to wear. The face that says, "I trust the plan." The face that says, "God is working." The face that says, "I am at peace with what I cannot understand." But underneath that face, in the quiet, in the dark, in the middle of the night when the performance is finally over, there was a question I was terrified to ask: does God actually see me? Because if He does, why does this feel so much like being invisible? That question is not a failure of faith. That question is faith being honest. And the God who created you, whatever name your tradition calls Him by, did not design you to perform trust. He designed you to wrestle with it, to bring the full, unedited, unpolished weight of your real life and lay it down and say, "I do not understand this, but I am choosing you anyway." That choosing, when it costs you something, when it happens in the dark, is not weakness. It is the most powerful act available to a human soul. Today we are talking about 6 life challenges that every human being faces, and the specific, profound, deeply personal thing that God teaches through each one. Not religion, not doctrine, life. The universal human experience of being alive and trying to trust something larger than yourself through every season of it. If you have ever believed in God and still felt like you were drowning, comment below, "I am still here, still trusting, even now." When everything falls apart at once, God is not punishing you. He is rebuilding you from a better foundation. At some point in every human life, everything falls apart at the same time. Not one thing, everything. The relationship ends the same week the job disappears. The health crisis arrives in the same season the finances collapse. The person you were depending on leaves at the exact moment you had nothing left to depend on yourself, and you are standing in the middle of a life that looks nothing like what you built, and nothing like what you asked for, and the only question your mind can form is, "What did I do to deserve this?" That question assumes a connection between your suffering and your failure. That the collapse is punishment. That if you had been better, more faithful, more deserving, the falling apart would not have come. This assumption is one of the most painful and most common lies that suffering tells. Every wisdom tradition in human history has grappled with the reality that good people suffer, not occasionally, consistently, deeply, in ways that have no visible connection to anything they did wrong. The answer that every tradition ultimately arrives at is not that suffering is punishment, it is that suffering is transformation. The foundation that collapses was never the real foundation. It was the thing you built your life on before you discovered what your life actually needed to be built on. And the collapsing, as violent and disorienting as it feels, is clearing the ground for something that will hold the weight of everything that is coming. Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. The breaking open is not the end of the story. It is the moment the story finally gets access to the part of you that the intact version kept sealed. When God allows everything to fall apart at once, He is not turning away. He is turning toward the version of you that can only emerge from the rubble, toward the foundation that can only be laid when the false one is no longer in the way, toward the life that was always waiting underneath the one you were trying so hard to maintain. You are not being punished. You are being rebuilt by hands that know exactly what they are doing and have never once lost a person they chose to rebuild. Let the falling happen. The ground that waits beneath it is more solid than anything that just collapsed." When the prayer goes unanswered, God's silence is not His absence. It is His most difficult gift. Nothing tests faith like the prayer that does not get answered, not the small prayer, the one that cost you everything to bring, the one you prayed with more sincerity and more desperation and more complete emptying of yourself than any prayer you had ever offered. The one about the person you loved who was sick, the one about the marriage that was breaking, the one about the child who had lost their way, the one that contained the full weight of everything that mattered to you and that you placed before the Creator of the universe with the complete and vulnerable trust that He both heard and cared. And the answer did not come, not the way you needed it, not in the time you needed it, and in some cases, not at all. That silence is the hardest place in faith, not the doubt, the silence. Because doubt at least feels active. The silence feels like being ignored, and being ignored by the God you trusted with your most undefended prayer is a specific kind of wound that takes years to understand and even longer to heal. What every person who has survived long enough to look back at their unanswered prayers eventually discovers is the same thing. Not that the prayers were wrong, not that God did not hear, but that the answer that came was not the answer that was asked for, because the answer that was asked for was not the answer that was needed. You asked for the outcome. God worked on the person. You asked for the situation to change. God changed what the situation was producing in you. You asked for the suffering to end. God used the suffering to build something in you that every comfortable answer would have prevented. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The unanswered prayer is not the absence of power. It is the redirection of it toward the only place where real change ever originates, inside you. The silence of God is not cold. It is the silence of a craftsman working on something that requires absolute concentration, something that cannot be rushed, something that the very asking of the prayer set in motion in a direction you could not yet see because you were still looking at what you asked for rather than what was being built in response to the asking. Your prayer was heard, every word of it, every tear behind it, every sleepless night it came from. The answer is coming in the form that will actually help you. Not the form that felt like help from where you were standing when you asked. trust the silence. It has never been empty. When you lose someone, you cannot imagine living without. God holds what death cannot take. Grief is the price of love, and nobody tells you how expensive it is until the bill arrives. The loss of a person who was woven so completely into the fabric of your daily life that their absence does not feel like losing one thing. It feels like losing the entire architecture of your world. The person who knew you in the specific way that nobody else has ever known you. The one whose presence made ordinary days feel like enough. The one you called first with every piece of news. The one whose voice was the sound of home. And they are gone. And the world continues turning with a complete indifference to the size of what just left it. And you are supposed to continue functioning inside a life that has a permanent shape of that person-sized hole in it that nothing and no one will ever completely fill. Every human being who has ever lived has stood in this place. Not one has been exempt. The king and the beggar, the saint and the sinner, the person of great faith and the person of none. Grief is the universal tax on love, and the creator of this world built it into the design, not as punishment, as the proof of something, the proof that what you shared was real, that it mattered, that the connection between two souls is not a small thing. That love of the depth you are now grieving is one of the closest things available in this life to the divine. And divine things, when they pass through human experience, leave marks that are permanent. Khalil Gibran wrote, "When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight." The grief is not separate from the love. The grief is the love, continuing, in the only form available to it now. God holds what death cannot take. The love does not disappear when the person does. The connection does not end at the boundary of what we can see. Every tradition that has ever grappled honestly with mortality arrives at some version of the same understanding, that the soul is not extinguished by the body's ending, that what was real between two people does not become unreal simply because one of them is no longer visible. Grieve completely. Do not rush through it. Do not perform recovery for the comfort of the people watching. Let the grief be as large as the love was, because that is what it is. The love finding its way through the only passage left open to it. And in the grief, in the genuine, unperformed depth of it, you will find something that nothing else in life produces. The unmistakable presence of a God who grieves with you, who does not stand at a clinical distance from your loss, who sits in the rubble with you and holds what you cannot hold, and waits with you for the morning that always, always comes after the darkest night. Morning always comes. That has never once been untrue. When you cannot forgive, the prison you are refusing to leave is costing you more than the person who put you there. There is a person in your life whose name arrived in your mind the moment you read that heading. You know what they did. The betrayal that rewrote who you trusted. The cruelty that left a mark you are still carrying years later. The person who took something from you that you have never fully recovered. Who broke something in you that you have spent significant portions of your life trying to rebuild. Who did what they did with a casualness that suggested they never understood the size of what they were doing or simply did not care. And you have carried it. not because you wanted to, because putting it down felt like telling them it was acceptable. Like releasing your grip on the injury was the same as releasing your claim to justice. Like forgiving meant agreeing that what happened was not as bad as it was. Forgiveness means none of those things, not in any tradition, not in any honest understanding of what it actually is. Forgiveness is not a statement about what happened. It is a decision about where you are going to live. The person who does not forgive is not living in the present. They are living in the moment of the injury, returning to it, replaying it, feeding it with attention that the person who caused it no longer deserves and the life you are still trying to build desperately needs. The resentment you are carrying was never a punishment for them. It was always a weight on you. And the God who designed you for freedom did not design you to live inside a prison whose door you are holding closed from the inside. Seneca wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? The cause is behind you, the anger is in you, and you are the one paying for both every single day that you refuse to put it down." Forgiveness is the most difficult spiritual act available to a human being because it requires you to release something that felt like it was protecting you. The anger felt like armor. The resentment felt like evidence that you know your own worth. But armor that you cannot take off is not protection. It is a prison with better aesthetics. Release it, not for them. They may never deserve it. Release it because you deserve to be free. Because the life waiting for you on the other side of that release is incomparably richer than the one you are living inside the injury. God does not ask you to forget. He does not ask you to pretend it did not happen, or that it did not matter, or that the person who did it was right. He asks you to hand the weight of it to Him, to stop carrying what was never yours to carry permanently, to let the justice be His rather than yours to manufacture. Put it down. Your hands were meant for building, not for holding on to what has already broken. When you feel like you have wasted your life, it is never too late for God to write a new chapter. This is the fear that lives in the quiet, not the loud fear. The quiet one, the one that arrives in the stillness after everyone has gone to bed, and the performance of a functioning life has been set aside for the night. The one that asks whether the years that have already passed were used the way they should have been, whether the choices that led here were the right ones, whether the person you are at this point in your life is the person you were supposed to become, or a lesser version of them produced by too many compromises and too much time spent on the wrong things. The fear that you have wasted it. Not all of it, enough of it. The specific years and opportunities and relationships and moments of potential that you did not fully inhabit. That passed while you were looking away or playing it safe or living inside a smaller story than the one available to you. This fear is almost universal. It visits people of every age, every background, every level of achievement, the person who built an empire and the person who built nothing, the person of deep faith and the person of none. It arrives in the quiet and it asks its question and it waits to see what you do with the answer. The answer that the creator of your life gives to this question is consistent across every wisdom tradition that has ever grappled with it. It is not the years already lived that determine the life. It is what is done with the years remaining. The tree planted today does not refuse to grow because the planting was late. The seed placed in the ground now becomes what it was designed to become, regardless of how long it sat unplanted. Epictetus wrote, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. What is in your power is now, not then. Not the years that went differently than you wished. Now, this moment, this decision, this single step in the direction of the life you still have the capacity to build." God does not look at a human life and calculate the years wasted. He looks at the human being standing in front of him right now and sees what they are still capable of. Every prophet in every tradition who was called late. Every person who found their purpose in the second half of their life rather than the first. Every soul who turned around after years of the wrong direction and discovered that the God they were turning toward had been facing them the entire time. It is not too late. It is never too late while there is breath in you. The chapter that begins today is not diminished by the chapters that came before it. It is informed by them, strengthened by them, made richer by the specific journey that led to this exact starting point. Begin today with whatever you have, from wherever you are. The story is not finished, and the God who writes it has never once run out of ways to redeem a life that turned back toward him. When you finally understand, every hard season was preparing you for something you could not yet see. There comes a moment in every life of genuine faith when the pattern becomes visible, not during the hard seasons. After enough of them have passed that you can stand at a distance and look at the whole arc, at the loss that made room for what replaced it, at the door that closed and what it was protecting you from that you could not have seen from the front of it, at the prayer that went unanswered and what the silence produced in you that the answer would have prevented, at the years that felt like nothing was moving and what was quietly, invisibly being built in you during the stillness. The pattern is always the same, not identical in its details, universal in its structure. Every hard season was a preparation. Every loss made room. Every unanswered prayer redirected energy toward something more essential. Every wilderness built something that the inhabited land specifically could not. Every breaking open let in a light that the intact version had been keeping out. Every season of waiting was a season of becoming, even when it felt like nothing more than enduring. You could not have seen this at the beginning. You were not supposed to see it at the beginning. The seeing comes after the living. The understanding comes after the surviving. The recognition of the pattern comes after enough chapters have accumulated that the shape of what was being built becomes impossible to miss. Faith was never meant to be sight. It was meant to carry you through the chapters before the meaning arrived. And when you finally see it, something happens that is difficult to describe to someone who has not experienced it. Gratitude arrives for the hard things, not performance gratitude, not the gratitude you say because you are supposed to say it. Real gratitude, the quiet, deep, permanent gratitude of someone who has been shown through the full arc of their own life that the God they trusted in the dark was doing something in the dark that the light would eventually reveal. And with that gratitude comes a peace that rewrites the past, not erasing the pain, reframing what the pain was for. Lao Tzu wrote, "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Do not resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. The resistance is always more painful than the thing resisted. The surrender is always the beginning of the understanding." There is a reason the most unshakable people you have ever met are not people who were spared difficulty. They are people who went through it, stayed through it, and came out the other side having seen the pattern with their own eyes. Conviction like that cannot be borrowed. It can only be earned by living long enough to watch the hard seasons complete their work. Every season of your life had a purpose, including the ones you are still inside, including the ones that have not yet revealed what they were for, including the one that right now feels most like it is costing you more than it is producing. That season is producing something. You will see it, not today perhaps, not this year, but the seeing will come. With the same certainty that morning follows darkness and that the pattern always reveals itself to the person who stayed long enough to witness it. Stay. Keep trusting. Keep showing up in the dark. The pattern is already forming. The purpose is already present. You just have not reached the vantage point yet. You will. That is the promise that every life of genuine faith eventually gets to collect. 6 challenges. Every human being faces every one of them, and God teaches something irreplaceable through every single one. When everything falls apart, He is building a better foundation. When the prayer goes unanswered, He is working on the person rather than the problem. When grief arrives, He sits in it with you and holds what death cannot take. When unforgiveness imprisons you, He is offering the key that only releasing the weight can produce. When the fear of wasted years arrives, He is pointing at the years still remaining and saying, "Begin." And when the understanding finally comes, He is there in it with you, showing you what was present in every season you thought you were navigating alone. This is not a Christian message. It is not a Muslim message. It is not a Hindu or Jewish or Buddhist message. It is the message that every human soul that has ever looked honestly at the arc of its own life and traced the hand that was guiding it through the hard seasons has arrived at independently. God was there, in all of it. Not watching from a distance, not managing from above. Present, in the rubble, in the silence, in the grief, in the unforgiveness you were carrying, in the fear of the wasted years, in the wilderness that felt like abandonment, in the breaking open that felt like ending. He was there. He is here. He will be in every season still coming. The faith that survives the hard seasons is not the faith that never doubted. It is the faith that doubted and came back. That fell apart and rebuilt. That went quiet and returned. That asked the honest question and waited for the honest answer, even when the waiting took years. Seneca wrote in his final letters, It is not that I am brave. It is that I have decided what deserves my trust. After everything, after every season, after every challenge and every loss and every silence and every rebuilding, God deserves the trust. He has always deserved it. The hard seasons did not prove otherwise. They proved it more completely than the comfortable ones ever could. You are not alone in whatever season you are in right now. You never were, you never will be. If this video reached you in the middle of a season that does not yet make sense, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the God who was in every season before this one is in this one too. And remember, the story of your life is not finished, and the one writing it has never once lost the plot. Like this if it hit your soul. Drop a comment. Which season are you in right now? Subscribe. Words like this every week, right when you need them.